Hello Internet, welcome to the channel. My name's Frankie and in this video we are building a habitat for the West African lion. The very first thing that we're going to do for this lion habitat is to create a custom barrier. Now you can see on the floor there is some sand already, and that's because I'd already marked out where I wanted this habitat to be. Initially I was going to have it divided in two and have some cheetahs in the zoo as well. However, when it came closer to time to actually building it, I decided against it. I kind of think that this large area would be better for just one species instead, so we're just going to go for the lions in this video. What I'm doing for this custom barrier is I'm going to create the typical carnivore kind of fence, which is a tall mesh fence that tilts inwards at the top as an anti-climb kind of barrier. To do that, I'm just using various sized mesh frame panels from, I think it's the Planet Zoo theme. It might not actually be, but it's definitely from the base game, so you will have this available to you. I use a 4x4 piece to get the bulk of the fence. Then I have a little look about and decide to use a metal pole to just go up the side of it. I'm only going to do it on one side of the fence, so that's easily copy and pasteable to kind of create the entire perimeter of this habitat. When you're creating a fence like this, it's always a good idea to just have one post so that you can copy and paste it around the perimeter of your habitat and sync it into each other a bit more fluidly. Otherwise you're going to be doubling up on posts and it's going to get quite messy quite quickly. Then at the top I use a much shorter post, and it's just a matter of getting it at the right angle and making sure it's in line with your initial post and then angling it out a little bit. You can then apply the mesh pieces to that and make sure that it lines up quite nicely with the larger mesh piece that you've already placed. Something that I did to break up the sea of mesh, because at the moment it looks just a bit bland, was use a metal strip with some like divots in it that is from the Twilight pack. Despite the fact that it's from a different set entirely, like these pieces are primarily from Planet Zoo and then the other one is from the Twilight set, I don't think it contrasts too heavily and it actually blends in quite nicely, which allows you to break up the pretty uniform looking fence and just make it a little bit more interesting. Once I was happy with this basic fence shape, it was really a simple case of copy and pasting it around the perimeter of our habitat. Now this does actually take quite a while, it's quite a monotonous task to do, but by the end of it, having this custom barrier really does make quite a difference. At the front of the habitat, I do decide to leave a little bit of space, and that is because we are about to start building our habitat house and I need it to like fit in and blend into the fence pretty smoothly. So we're going to leave the fencing for now and then join it up to the building once we have built it. The main building pieces that I'm going to be using to construct our habitat house are the mud wall pieces, and this is from the Africa theme. I want to try and use these a little bit more, make sure that our buildings are a bit more themed towards the animals that live there. So I decided to go for the mud wall and just try and use that as much as possible. What I'm going to do is create a very basic shape for this habitat house, and then we're going to halve it so that we have half of it be an area that the animals can go in and sleep, and then the other half is for the guests to go in and access and look at our animals through a window, which will allow you a bit of an insight into their sleeping quarters, which is something that you quite often see in zoos, so it's useful to use these in our designs. Now before we pop the roof on, I decided I'd get a bit of a head start on the interior, because once you put the roof on it becomes a bit difficult to move your camera about and stuff, so I thought I'd get ahead of it and do it now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that back wall where the habitat house opens up into the enclosure. I'm going to cover that using aquatic faux rocks. The faux rocks act as decoration in terms of what they actually mean to the animal. They do not have an impact whatsoever in the coverage, and it doesn't matter that they're from a different biome or anything. The animals really don't care. It has no impact on any of their statistics. So when you can use aquatic rocks to create something that you find to be quite pleasing, I would suggest you do so, because there are no restrictions in terms of how it's impacting our animals. What I'm doing with these aquatic rocks is I'm just hiding this back wall to kind of give a facade at the back. Sometimes in these habitat houses you will see some painted murals to look like the African savannah or something, but I wanted to create a bit more of a three-dimensional effect. Kind of like you can have in your exhibit boxes, you can have 3D facades in there. So that's the kind of thing that I wanted to do here, just by covering this rear wall with different shaped aquatic rocks. After adding some hay for the bedding for these lions to sleep on, it was time to add the roof. And this is really nothing fancy. I'm using some of the square flat log pieces to act as a ceiling. That's what our guests and our animals are going to see whilst they're inside. And then the exterior is going to be made up of the hay roof pieces. And fortunately, by having this ceiling piece, you actually hide the fact that the faux rocks kind of overshoot a little bit and go up into the ceiling. That is not visible from inside, so this is an easy way to cover that. Now inside the habitat I had an idea right from the get-go of what I wanted to do with this, and that was to make it be potentially our grassiest habitat yet. Most of my habitats I like to clutter with rocks and plants and make them look really busy, but I wanted to restrain myself and make this one actually look like it is within the plains of the African savannah, which is quite difficult for me, to show restraint and not cover it in plants and rocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one centerpiece to this habitat, and that's going to be a kopje. In Africa you will often see these large rocky outcrops from which various plants and trees are growing, and these will just be smack bang in the middle of wide open grassland. These spaces often end up being homes to prides of lions and troops of baboons, so they really are a hotspot for wildlife, and I think it would be important to have one as a centerpiece inside of this habitat. So in order to create our kopje, what I'm doing is I'm using the terrain altering tools to just raise up this portion of ground, make a nice mound hill kind of area that I can then cover in rocks and trees and plant life, and maybe add a little pond at the bottom as well. But all of our plant life and rocks are basically going to be restricted to this area, which will really make it a focal point and centerpiece for this habitat. Now before we get onto this beautiful time lapse and I shut up and let you enjoy it, I would just like to ask, if you're not already, please consider subscribing to the channel. You'll get to see my videos for free appearing in your subscription feed. You can unsubscribe at any time, and most importantly, you will make me feel like I have some friends. Also, maybe put some words in the word box below the video. Just let me know what you're thinking about these videos and what I should do next on the channel. Okay, I'm going to shut up and let you enjoy this wonderful time lapse. Once we are done placing all of our plant life, it is time to start adding our enrichment items, and as usual I'm going to place most of our food items near the front of the habitat. We're going to go near the fence where we've got a little viewing gallery down there, and we're going to kind of make sure that our animals are visiting there fairly often so that our guests are getting a decent view, and we're doing that by kind of baiting them with the food, I guess. Inside the sleeping area we're also going to use a little rubber hose ball kind of thing, and as for the rest of the toys we are just going to litter those all over the habitat to make sure they use as much of it as possible. Inside the guest portion of our habitat house, it is quite open and empty. There's a lot of empty space. So what we're going to do is we're going to start adding our education boards to begin with, and then we are just going to litter this with various African themed decorations. We're going to cluster loads of pots and stuff into corners, hang some masks on the wall, and even add a metallic lion sculpture that looks like it's been made out of like junk stuff, scrap metal. It looks really cool. For the outside viewing gallery, however, I did consider placing a viewing board, an education board, sorry, right on the fence, but it didn't sit well with me. So what I decided to do was hop over to our mixed species habitat where we've got our wildebeest, zebra and giraffe, and nick one of their habitat education boards and pop it right outside our lion enclosure so that we have a nice board kind of stand thingy for our education boards, and then we can place a lion sign just like we did with the zebras right in front of it just for a little bit of decoration. And with these final little decorative bits and pieces done, that was our habitat complete. Thank you so much for having watched this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving it a thumbs up and maybe subscribing to the channel to see more videos like this appearing in your subscription feed. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.